Hi there! This video is about the ideas behind risk management, one of the dominant ways of dealing with insecurity and uncertainty that we use in the contemporary world. At the end of the previous video, we saw that we have increasingly developed mechanisms to insulate our lives from all sorts of harms. However, at the same time, we've also become more aware of how vulnerable we really are. This has resulted in a greater perception of risk, a concept which plays a major role in our contemporary society. The main question we're going to address in this video is, how do we understand and deal with risk in our current age? As we saw in the previous video, for a long time throughout history, a risk of harm was considered a part of life, often involving natural or divine forces over which mankind did not have any control. A notion of risk as we know it today didn't exist. All harms were external, generated by forces outside of the human sphere of influence. After the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, things started to change. The growth of technological and economic innovations made life more efficient, more pleasant, and more safe. However, as a byproduct, these innovations often carried significant security and safety risks. In contrast to earlier times, these risks were man-made. They were no longer external, but rather manufactured. For example, take the development of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is a clean, highly efficient form of energy, and in that sense, it's a wonderful human innovation. However, nuclear energy can also be used in nuclear bombs, which of course are highly lethal. Also, the process of creating nuclear energy involves a wide range of risks with a devastating impact should they materialize. Thus, while nuclear energy has brought a lot of good, it has also created new, manufactured risks that didn't exist before. What this example illustrates is that while innovations in science and technology lead to new solutions for all sorts of problems, at the same time they can also generate new risks. The variety of different risks to which we as human beings are exposed has increased dramatically with the rise of these new manufactured risks. Moreover, as we've seen in the previous video, we have also become increasingly aware of such risks and the impact they may have on the things we value. Combined, these two facts have made risk one of the defining features of our times. Some even call today's society a risk society because of this. Because of the rise of manufactured risks on an increasing scale, it became necessary to find novel ways of understanding and dealing with these risks. The development of risk management was the result. So what is risk management? Risk management is an approach to risk that has emerged since the Second World War. It was embraced by engineers developing ever more complex technological systems, but also by businesses seeking to minimize financial risks. Over time, it was adopted in numerous other sectors as well. Now it has become the dominant paradigm for dealing with risk in our modern times. What are the key elements of this paradigm? First, risk management, as the name already suggests, views risk as something that can be managed. This doesn't mean that risk managers believe that all risks can be solved or banned entirely. There can always be uncertainties that make eliminating risks completely impossible. However, we can face many risks head-on. We can seek to understand them, and we can develop mechanisms and procedures to reduce them to acceptable levels. So the idea is not to eliminate most risks entirely, but to reduce them, to make them manageable. Second, risk management seeks to quantify risk, for example through a formula such as this one. Risk is probability times impact. So the size of a risk is defined by the likelihood that it will materialize times the damage it will do once it does. If a risk has a very low probability, let's say the occurrence of a flood, but the impact is very high, it causes many casualties and creates significant financial damage, then the risk will still be significant. In contrast, when a risk has a higher probability, let's say someone breaking into your home to steal your belongings, but the damage is smaller, it only affects you and your things, then using this formula, the risk is not so significant. Third, risk management generally consists of a number of different elements. First, risk identification. This involves pinpointing things or phenomena as a risk. For example, discovering that global warming is caused by too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Second, risk assessment. This involves establishing the quality and quantity of the risk, calculating what its probability and its impact are, and establishing what would be an acceptable risk level. Defining the acceptable risk levels entails that we find a balance between the costs we need to invest to reduce the risk and the impact and probability that remain. On the basis of this, we can decide which risks need to be given the highest priority. And third, risk mitigation. This involves generating mechanisms or putting procedures in place that will reduce the risk to the acceptable levels we have defined. This can involve using technical measures, but also policies or regulation, or a variety of incentives. Let's do a recap. Risk management has become the dominant paradigm for understanding and dealing with risk in modern societies. It views risk as something that can be managed, as something that can be quantified and qualified, and for which we can develop counter-strategies, so that the risk will be reduced to acceptable levels. Risk management does not believe that all risks can be eliminated. Risk management calculates risks as probability times impact. It generally consists of 3 elements or phases: risk identification, risk assessment, and risk mitigation. While risk management seems to dominate much of our thinking about risk, it is important to realize it is not without its fair share of critics. What their criticism entails will be discussed in the next video.